So, good afternoon. Tis good afternoon. And I love teasing and thinking, where are we? What are we doing? Anyway, this one is with an artist who I've been oh, annoying, irritating to because he's never been sure if he would agree to do the video or not. But here we are in his terrific large studio attached to his lovely home in East Lothian. And the moment you see this artist's paintings, he's right at the top of his game, and they're so recognisable and so well regarded, you'll know who it is. So, good afternoon, George Birrell.
Good afternoon, David.
Well, it's great to be here, George, and we're sitting in one of the most sought after and loveliest parts, not only of Scotland, but of East Lothian. But it didn't all start here, did it?
No, I'm Glaswegian.
We've got a cup of tea and a biscuit.
Yes, indeed.
I'll say no more.
Yeah, no, I started in Glasgow, trained at Glasgow School of Art after attending Hindland School. And after art school, I did teacher training, which was a will I, won't I? And I'm kind of glad I did, in a way. So I taught in secondary schools for a number of years, then I resigned, painted full-time, burned myself out after 5 years in the 1980s, and sought refuge for a wee while teaching part-time in further education, which was interesting, completely different animal to teaching in secondary schools. But I got tired of that very quickly, and I was making more money painting, so I left, and I've been fully self-employed since 1998.
So people, I think, are inspired by these stories, George. I was talking to another artist who'd been a lawyer before he was an artist. And so you were how old when you became a full-time artist, roughly?
48.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Because
yeah.
It gives so much hope. And so many people finish their lives. Life goes so quickly, doesn't it? And they finish at 60 or something, or 65. I think, gosh, I wish I'd done that. But have you any regrets or not?
Oh, absolutely none. It was like retiring, and in that sense, the earlier you retire, the longer you live. But of course, I've never worked so hard as the time that I retired, because I was doing lots of photography, lots of travelling for galleries out to artists' locations or other galleries for the artists, and trying to balance that between being in the studio and producing my own work and delivering it and collecting back unsold work. So I spent 30,000 miles a year driving. I don't know how many hours I spent painting, but I was producing 200, 300 paintings a year. Nowadays that's down to 40, 50 maybe.
Yeah.
Partly because I've changed medium. I work only with oil paint now, and it's a slower process. Because it's slower, it's much more enjoyable. You can take longer to savour what you're doing and spend longer looking at things before they go in a frame and go out. So,
Do you know, well, I had to fight hard to get you to join my stable. And I think what's nice is the fact, George, that you don't rattle paintings out. We won't mention any artists who do. You take your time. They're very architecturally painted as well. Is architecture another one of your loves?
it is very much architecture, lettering, calligraphy, lettering on buildings especially, where you've got stonemasons who are properly trained as letterers and stonemasons, and you have the two things combined where they exploit the fall of light and shade onto beautiful Roman capitals. That's a great delight of mine.
And we've got paintings that are almost finished behind us, and we're going to talk about a painting that is finished. But so many people love it when, they're looking into one of your landscapes and they're looking to see, and there's a light on in the window. So there is a bit of storytelling as well. But you never say, or hardly ever say, on a painting in the title where it is.
Well, I have to be truthful because I don't paint real places. Everywhere's fictional. They're all made up. The reason why I can paint on the spot, and I have done, probably not for 20 years, but used to paint on the spot when I was in France. But the beauty of not painting on the spot is that you're not obliged to tell the truth, and telling the truth is very overrated. where painting's concerned. It doesn't matter that the tree is just there and the house is just there. When you go back in the studio, you can improve the composition from an outdoor one. But rather than being outdoor, I work in the studio where I've got home comforts. It's warm, it's dry. There's no one coming poking their finger in the paint to see if it stains their clothing, which has happened. So you have no compositional compromise. You can have exactly the composition you want. And in my case, there's a set of sort of abstract qualities that I fall back on using opposites of colour. Put orange against blue or red against green, yellow against purple. And I'll use large shapes, small shapes. I'll use bright colour, drab colour. So all these kind of contrasting concepts help me to forge the paintings. And I find that, I never think, oh, what will I do if I can't remember a detail? You just invent, you just make it up. And there's an interesting point there, which when I used to teach, very often, someone who'd brought in what they thought was a very good photograph, which probably was a very good photograph, and they wanted to make a painting of it. Well, first of all, I couldn't see the point in that. If you've already got a good document, do you need to paint yourself another? Anyhow, these people were determined to do this, so I tried to advise them. And sometimes they would decide that one part of it wasn't right, and they wanted to change it. So the minute they discarded their photograph and its information, they're then left with this gap in the painting that they have to fill. And that's a very, very difficult task, because you're already committed to the light and shade situation and the time of day situation of that particular scene that the photograph made. So you're stuck. And I saw people stuck with this so many times. I thought, I'm never getting into that. I'm never working from photographs. I'm never going outside to paint. I'm just going to invent the whole thing, make it all up as I go along.
But you are inspired by certain villages.
Oh, definitely.
Certain castles.
Absolutely. Oh, there are magical places.
Yeah.
Not so much a whole village, but just sometimes fish and chips on the seawall and Pit and Weem.
Yeah.
Dusk. The light coming across the Forth from a lighthouse.
Wasn't it Orkney or Shetland or somewhere that quite inspired you too?
Orkney very much, yeah. Shetland not so much. I've still to fall in love with Shetland, but Orkney is magical. The ancient places there are just captivating, and the towns too. They put the gables out onto the water, rather than the front of the house. So the gables out on a wee pier, and there'll be a boat at the side for somebody's convenience to go across the harbour to drop something off. And it's just gorgeous. The only thing about it is if you're on land, you don't get the best view. So it's lovely to get a boat and just go out, and then you can see the essence of the harbour side from where it looks best.
And I think also, George, what so many people admire is when they come in to the gallery, and they may have one or two, they're Birrell collectors, they've followed you. It's quite unbelievable, because it's like 50 years since you graduated, isn't it?
It is.
And, but you've still got this joie de vivre of great positivity in life. And let's talk about this painting, which has just been finished, because I've noticed we've got two crackers in the gallery, but if you could talk about this painting, which is coming, you seem to be having a love of greens and browns that maybe hadn't been used before.
Well, funnily enough, the greens and browns are a marriage of yellow and purple. So it's again opposites coming together. I love buildings. I love the juxtaposition you get, especially where there's a hillside and you've got buildings climbing up. They climb up the hillside. It's just a delight. You can find ways to create a compositional motif very easily. Not necessarily if you're on the spot, and photographers have the problem that, there'll be one element isn't quite, it's a tree in the way, or they can't get quite high enough or quite low enough or whatever. I just make it all up. So I have the optimum. This house appears here, that one appears there, where you have the sort of crossover, the changeover, like a jockey's quartered shirt. Dark, light, light, dark, and it's just such good fun. You've got complete freedom to do what you want Whereas painting
yeah.
out in the spot, that wouldn't be the case.
I think the two fabulous new paintings which are in the gallery are called Red on Green and Village Park. And they've got these, it's a great colour of green. It's like a sort of cross between a dark green and almost like a British racing green or something, all thrown in together. But let's talk about this painting here, George. What was the idea? How did it all come together?
Just as I've been describing, just the idea that there's a village on a hill. It may not be in a hill, it may be a flat village, and we're looking at it from an elevated perspective, but the buildings are all seen in front elevation. So I don't use linear perspective, where you have lines converging to a vanishing point on the horizon. That is no use to me because it creates shapes that are rhombuses, where you have a sloping top and bottom going towards, a building would have that on one side. So I discard that completely. So you'll see either a gable or a front in my pictures, and that way I have shapes that I can use and play with. I used to use collage. I used to cut gables and cut front sides of buildings, cut out shapes of trees, boats, mill wheels, and so on. And the lovely thing about collage is until you glue something down, you're not committed, and you can play and move the parts around until you find a pleasing composition.
We had a very erudite, very serious collector of art, multi-million pounds of paintings in his collection, and he came in and he looked at yours, and he'd bought yours before, and he actually was I just always remember him looking at the painting and just said they're very confidently painted. And so I suppose going back to this new painting, it's the way that possibly a younger, less experienced artist, the way you've thrown in purple just in with the trees and things and the bold colours that don't necessarily go together, but they work.
Hopefully. Yeah, well, again, it's a yellow and purple painting, which when you mix the two together, you have these kind of autumnal greens and browns coming through, depending on the proportion of red to blue that you mix with the yellow. Yellow against purple is not my home territory. My home territory is orange and blue, but I make myself go red and green, yellow and purple from time to time, just to ring the changes and to give myself a challenge, because I'm less comfortable with those colours.
It's an absolute stunner, and I'm delighted it's come into the gallery. Well, so we're here, George, and I think people know you're so well known and they want to know a bit about the painting. So that's fine, they know the George Birrells because your paintings are so collected and collectible. But a lot of the viewers who've watched this series, they want to know a bit more about you, and you're multi-talented. You play in a band, don't you?
I do. I play guitar in a band, but I'm not a musician. I own guitars.
I'm looking at bits and pieces around here as well. And was that something that could have been a career?
No, definitely not. I'm not a performer. I'm not. I love studying music. I have had very earnest guitar lessons. Stopped since the lockdown, but 10 years before then, I had a fabulous guitar teacher over in Haddington, Malcolm McFarlane, who's a superb guitarist.
Right.
Ex-Shack Attack guitarist, and studied with him for many years, 10 years or more. So the whole music thing is not about me being a performer, because I'm not. I dread it. I get desperate nerves before a performance. But playing a small band, saxophone, guitar, bass, drums, and a singer. And we have a gig coming up in St Andrews next month at the Botanic Gardens to promote the Botanic Gardens. But I'm not a performer.
But you sound like, at this stage in life, you're still having great fun, you're still working, and all the rest. And, I ask every artist in these videos, what do you see your work evolving, changing, and paint till you drop?
Oh yeah, can't afford not to.
If you believe that.
That's true. The lovely thing is I've worked through various media through my career. I worked for many years, right through the 80s, with gouache, only gouache, water-based poster paint. For much of that time, it was doing 9-inch square paintings framed out to 16 inches square. There'll be lots and lots of those around because, as I said earlier, I burned myself out in the 80s, in the early 80s, and it was just through having 6 or 7 exhibitions a year, needing 30, maybe 40 paintings. So it's a lot of pictures to produce, and really and truly, it was too much.
Well, I think George Birrell's playing it down a little bit, that he's not painting and doing quite as much as you were in these wild times of the 80s. But I hope that you come up, because you're a great raconteur, and I hope you come up in the fast lane, because you're still a pretty fast guy, driving fast Teslas, I seem to remember. Drive up to Ballater, come to my favourite restaurant, the Fish Shop, on me soon, and we'll finish off these stories. But it really is. Tom's coming around with me today, and it's just brilliant to see so many paintings in reality. And all I can say is thank you, George Birrell.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, David.
Well, that's remember me.